Hey guys, this video was supposed to be episode number 2 of my Glass-Eyed Jimmy project. This is a side project for fun that we just take a look at historical events and historical people. What I wanted to do is I wanted to continue into the late 1930s and World War II and look at the United States banking industry. There's a lot to look at there. While I was doing research, one name kept popping up, and that was Prescott Bush. So that's where we start. But that's definitely not where we end, because about 13 minutes into this video, we're going to take a very hard right turn, and we're going to talk about Jeffery Epstein. I think this video is probably the most comprehensive timeline of Jeffery Epstein's history that's out there. You're going to see a lot of things in this video that you haven't seen before. It is going to definitely open your eyes. Now, I can't take credit for it, because as you will see, this video is 100% made up from YouTube clips. The guys out there making the YouTube content on Epstein right now are the ones that deserve all the credit. Most of these guys are independent content creators. Why? The New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, Bloomberg, Fox, CBS, none of them have put this much effort into doing research and coming back and reporting what actually was going on. Well, I think we all know the answer to that. Down at the bottom of the video, I am going to put all of the video sources. You can go and watch the content. I've done a lot of fact checking to the best of my ability. This is 100% accurate. If you find something that's disputable, please let me know. One final thing, before you start watching this, you need to go into it politically neutral, meaning you can't be on one side or the other. This is incredibly difficult because we've all been programmed. We've been programmed to take a side. When you're watching it, if you hear a name come up that you presume is on your team, you're going to want to turn the video off and walk away. Don't. Because I assure you, while you may think that they're on your team, you're not on their team. And that will become abundantly clear by the end of this video. This is a hard one to edit. It's the longest video we've ever done. There's a lot of work involved in it. Please watch the entire thing.
Prescott Sheldon Bush, born May 15, 1895, in Columbus, Ohio, a man whose Yale pedigree and Skull and Bones membership would set the template for generations of Bush men to follow.
Prescott Sheldon Bush followed not in his father's footsteps, but his grandfather's, James Smith Bush, by attending Yale College in 1913. There, Prescott would join the Skull and Bones Society, the oldest and most prestigious of Yale's constellation of secret fraternal orders. Prescott's spy president's son George H.W. and presidential grandson George W. would both later be inducted into the secret club. And of course, it's no secret that Skull and Bones was a popular entryway for future spooks into the cult of intelligence. Prescott was instrumental in building not only the Bush family's legacy at Yale, but also the mythology of the Skull and Bones Society itself. He allegedly, according to Bonesman lore anyways, took part in the raiding of Native American hero Geronimo's tomb in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to steal his skull, which remains the enduring perverse relic of the order to this day. Prescott ultimately graduated from Yale in 1918. Now, it's no secret that Prescott Bush was considered by some of the old Brahmin families of New York and New England as a somewhat mediocre man whose only accomplishment was in marrying well. In 1921, Prescott married George H.W. Bush's mother, Dorothy Walker, the daughter of renowned banker and Eastern old boy George Herbert Walker, who would shortly after the marriage be appointed president of W.A. Harriman & Co. Bank. Harriman & Co. was, of course, the namesake bank of the Democratic Harriman family, the illustrious railroad tycoons. Even before he was hired to the firm by his father-in-law in 1926, Prescott Bush had been classmates with Roland Harriman at Yale and had been a member of Skull and Bones alongside both Roland and his older and probably more famous brother W. Averell Harriman during his time there.
By 1931, Prescott had become a managing partner at Brown Brothers Harriman, the most powerful private banking house in America. From their offices at 59 Wall Street, Prescott and his partners controlled a web of investments that stretched from American railroads to German steel. It was through this network that Prescott became one of 7 directors of a modest-looking bank called Union Banking Corporation. On paper, UBC appeared to be just another investment vehicle serving European clients. In reality, it was the American banking arm for Fritz Thyssen, the German steel magnate who had bankrolled Adolf Hitler since 1923. Thyssen himself would later write a book with the chilling title, I Paid Hitler. July 1942 brought a devastating headline in the New York Herald Tribune that made Prescott Bush's blood run cold. Hitler's angel has $3 million in US bank. The article revealed that Union Banking Corporation was holding Nazi money, possibly to be held for Nazi bigwigs. Prescott and his partners scrambled to explain their position as merely an unpaid courtesy for a client. Federal agents walked into Union Banking Corporation and seized all assets. They found what government investigators called a U.S. holding company with German and Polish subsidiaries that was actively managing Nazi interests. The seizure order specifically named Prescott Bush as one of the directors whose shares were confiscated as being held for enemy nationals. The government seizure that should have destroyed Prescott Bush instead became the foundation of a political dynasty that would reshape American history. After the war ended, federal authorities quietly returned the confiscated assets to their American shareholders, including Prescott Bush, along with a settlement of $1,500,000. Prescott emerged from the scandal not as a pariah, but as a respected Connecticut businessman, his skull and bones connections and Brown Brothers Harriman partnership intact. By 1947, he had reinvented himself as Connecticut's Republican finance chairman, raising money for the party while carefully cultivating his image as a moderate progressive. When Senator Brian McMahon died suddenly in 1952, Prescott seized his chance, defeating future Connecticut Governor Abraham Ribicoff to claim the seat. Prescott became President Dwight Eisenhower's loyal ally and occasional golfing partner. He served on the powerful Banking and Currency Committee, the same institution that had once investigated his Nazi banking connections, with no one daring to mention his past. Meanwhile, Prescott was grooming his sons for greatness, particularly his second boy, George Herbert Walker Bush.
On January 30th, 1976, President Gerald Ford, a man who had never won a presidential election, appointed George H.W. Bush as the 11th director of CIA, a man who, on paper anyways, had never worked for the agency.
Specifically, that he worked for the Central Intelligence Agency in 1963, more than a decade before he became its director. Why did you care about this?
Well, originally I was researching the Kennedy assassination, and I was looking through FBI files that were released about 10 years ago under the Freedom of Information Act, and I just came across George Bush's name, and it was a surprise to me. I didn't really know that he was with the CIA back then. And however, I assumed at the time that I found this document that everybody must know this, and it was just stated in the document that J. Edgar Hoover had written to the State Department a week after the assassination to summarize a briefing that was given to, quote, Mr. George Bush of the Central Intelligence Agency. It was about the reaction of the anti-Castro Cuban exiles in Miami to the assassination.
Now, George Bush was asked where he was the day Kennedy was assassinated, and he said, "I cannot remember where I was." We're attempting to prove that this is a picture of George Bush standing in front of the Texas School Book Depository before, during, and after the assassination of President Kennedy. You will notice this person is wearing the same type of tie, white shirt, suit, has his hands in his pockets, just like George Bush in the White House picture, is the same height, is the same weight, wearing the same pants, the same style of pants, same shoes in both pictures.
Bush called the FBI and said that he thought he knew who the killer of JFK was. Did you know that?
No. He
You didn't know? Yeah, he called the FBI in Houston.
Hey,
and he said,
what's up? It's George.
George Bush, I'm in Tyler, Texas, and I think I know who the killer is, and he informs on this guy, James Parrott, and James Parrott ended up being like one of his staffers. It was this weird cover story he kind of planted, and that came out in a memo. And there was another memo. These are declassified FBI memos, Freedom of Information Act. There was another memo that said after the assassination, J. Edgar Hoover briefed George Bush of the CIA. The problem was George Bush should not have been working for the CIA at that point. He should have been just a private citizen.
Prosecutor Lawrence Walsh says the presidential pardons of 6 former Reagan administration officials, including Caspar Weinberger, won't end the Iran Contra investigation. Walsh says Mr. Bush's own misconduct still is an issue. Details now from our law correspondent, Carl Stern.
Even though the Bush pardons eliminated the 2 remaining trials, the special prosecutor said he's not finished. Lawrence Walsh disclosed that only recently typewritten notes by Bush had been uncovered and might have to be subpoenaed.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us tonight. Donald Gregg still serves as your trusted advisor. He was deeply involved in running arms to the Contras, and he didn't inform you. Now, when President Reagan's trusted advisor, Admiral Poindexter, failed to inform him, the president fired him. Why is Mr. Gregg still inside the White House and still a trusted advisor?
Because I have confidence in him, and because this matter, Dan, as you well know, and your editors know, has been looked at by the $10 million study by the Senate and the House. It's been looked at by the Tower Commission. The Rodriguez testimony that you put on here, I just think it's outrageous because he was totally vindicated, swore under oath that he never talked to me about the Contras.
And then this, from the same month, this is from December 11th, 1992. It's an op-ed in the New York Times. It's titled, Mr. Barr's Cloud Growing Darker. By the way, it was William Barr, who was Attorney General at the time that George Herbert Walker Bush did those pardons, which ended the special counsel's investigation of Iran Contra.
What was it like being Attorney General with President Bush 41? And I realize it was a different time. It
was a different time. It was a much less savage time politically. On the other hand, it was the end of the Cold War, and he had to consolidate our gains after the Cold War. He was a master at international policy and foreign policy. He was a very tough-minded guy, but he was also the consummate gentleman.
A few years later, Barr was Attorney General. An independent counsel was investigating the Iran Contra scandal. It involved the Reagan administration secretly selling weapons to Iran to fund anti-communism efforts in Nicaragua. As part of that investigation, the independent counsel brought charges against multiple Reagan officials, including former Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger, for some little things like perjury and lying to Congress. Barr was skeptical of the investigation. In an interview, he said that many of the Iran Contra defendants had been treated, quote, very unfairly. And he helped convince President Bush to pardon 6 of those defendants.
BCCI was involved in some of the most sensitive intelligence operations of the Reagan-Bush years. Oh, that's exactly when Epstein went out on his own, including the secret sale of arms to Iran. Oh, you mean the ones that were where the chief middleman was Jeffrey Epstein's client, Adnan Khashoggi, and the U.S. side of the arms transaction was run by Jeffrey Epstein's fucking roommate, Stan Pottinger, and the British side of this illegal arms deal was run by Jeffrey Epstein's fucking London partner that he flew out to London to do the deals with.
After the dramatic surprise arrest of Jeffrey Epstein by the FBI when his private plane landed in New Jersey from Paris, and after Jeffrey Epstein was dragged into federal court in Manhattan on Monday, pleaded not guilty, and was ordered held without bail by a federal judge. After all of that, Attorney General William Barr was asked about the biggest new criminal case in the Justice Department yesterday, the Jeffrey Epstein case, and the Attorney General very clearly said this.
I'm recused from that matter because one of the law firms that represented Epstein long ago was a firm that I subsequently joined for a period of time.
That was yesterday. Today, the Attorney General said nothing about the Jeffrey Epstein case, but the Attorney General did order an unnamed Justice Department official to leak to selected news media that the Attorney General will not recuse himself from the new Jeffrey Epstein case. Bloomberg reported the news this way. Attorney General William Barr won't recuse himself from involvement in the new charges filed against alleged sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein by federal prosecutors in New York. According to a Justice Department official, Barr made the decision on Tuesday after consulting with career ethics officials at the department, said the official, who asked not to be identified, discussing a sensitive matter.
After leaving college, where he stayed for a few years and didn't get a degree, Jeffrey Epstein is teaching mathematics at the Dalton School with no degree. He is 21 years old. It's 1974. And now him and Mr. Barr are ready to set their plans in motion to take over the world. But not William Barr. He's going to start with William Barr's father, Donald Barr, the guy who hired him to teach at the school with no degree.
You know, elite, wealthy people
went to the school,
send their children there. Yeah.
And when he hired Epstein to become a professor teaching mathematics, this is a guy that's never had a degree before, right? Like Epstein never got a degree.
No, he would have not been eligible, as I understand it, to even teach in public school in New York.
How does that make any sense for him to get a job teaching, even though he's never had a degree before?
Right. So Donald Barr apparently hired unconventional teachers and was known for this, right?
At the Dalton School, we have two worlds converge around Jeffrey Epstein: the intelligence world and Jeffrey Epstein's distinctive behavior with young women. Both of these themes have now appeared. Donald Barr, who hired him, was from the OSS. He worked in the OSS during World War II and eventually transferred to the Interim Research and Intelligence Service. That group was merged into the State Department, and then all these little minor intelligence groups formed the CIA eventually. So Donald Barr is Intelligence 101. He's an OG of the intelligence world. Something which is heavily discussed right now is Donald Barr's science fiction book that he published named Space Relations.
Let's unpack this one. Donald Barr's 1973 novel, Space Relations. It's intense.
Intense is definitely the word. It's labeled dystopian science fiction, but it feels, I don't know, more like a brutal exploration of power.
Exactly. Power, morality, humanity itself, all set against this backdrop of, like, feudal space societies.
Yeah.
So our mission for you today is to pull out the really key stuff from this book. We're talking plot, the characters, the abuse, which is quite graphic, and especially any role children play in this whole thing.
And we should be clear, this involves some really mature themes, very graphic descriptions.
Absolutely. Understanding just how extreme the content is, as Barr wrote it, is kind of crucial if you want to be properly informed about the political undertones he's exploring.
Donald Barr's book is pretentious, a little crazy, and it's about a planet called Kosar. And these super rich people congregate there, and they're bored with their money, and they have pleasure slaves. You know, a lot of them are underage, a lot of young girls. There's a pretty graphic scene where a space pirate violates a young underage girl slave. He taunts her in front of the whole crew, makes a big spectacle of disrobing her, and goes to town on her. And, Donald Barr takes great pleasure in writing this stuff, you can tell. There's a group who founded Planet Kosar, and they're called the Carlyle Group. I mean, the Carlyle Society. But, I mean, really, dude, it's the Carlyle Group. Literally 15 years after this book is published, the freaks in Donald Barr's circle, all those high-money people in New York, they made the Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Society and the Carlyle Group, they're both named for Thomas Carlyle. They have a common thread. I would say you can't write this stuff, but he did write this stuff.
Breaking news for you right now. The Carlyle Group announcing that it is converting from a publicly traded partnership to become a full C corporation. It's going to happen effective January 1st. It becomes the fifth of the big private equity firms, following in the footsteps of Blackstone, Apollo, KKR, and Ares Management. In a statement, Carlyle co-founder David Rubenstein, Bill Conway, and Dan Aiello saying that, quote, "We couldn't be more pleased to see the company we started 30 years ago achieve this next step in our evolution. We're confident this step will support Carlyle's growth long-term into the future." The move expected to improve liquidity for the firm with $223 billion under management. And
Orioles owner and Carlyle Group founder David Rubenstein is named in the Epstein files. Rubenstein, though, is not accused of any wrongdoing. However, he is not accused of any wrongdoing. As first reported by Front Office Sports in November of 2012, the two exchanged emails referencing an in-person meeting they had later that month. Epstein sent Rubenstein an email with a link to a New York Times article about the Israeli defense minister leaving politics at the time.
I think it's because, frankly, there's a lot of big establishment types who are wrapped up in it. It's a very sordid, a very ugly story. I'm talking about the the story surrounding this guy, Jeff Epstein, who, and you know this story, Jeffrey Epstein. In 2006, he was hauled in by Palm Beach police for violating literally tens of underage girls for years and facing federal charges for trafficking them across the state lines. Involved in these child prostitution rings. And it comes out that this guy, Jeffrey Epstein, who was an extremely wealthy guy, a billionaire, was running in some the circles that you imagine a billionaire would be running. He, in his black book, he was traveling around with Bill Clinton and with guys like Alan Dershowitz and all sorts of these folks. And apparently, it turns out, well, he also was involved with Ken Starr.
Now, Democrats blasted him over a secret plea deal that he cut with alleged child molester Jeff Epstein's legal team. And that was done while he was serving as U.S. attorney in Miami during the Bush administration, of course, over a decade ago. Now, Acosta said it was the best deal he could strike, given the circumstances, the evidence, and the state prosecuting attorney's desire to kind of let this ride. So should have he resigned at all? Why did he resign? Joining us now is someone who represented Epstein years ago, former Whitewater Independent Counsel and Fox News contributor Ken Starr.
We turn to how Epstein tonight, who had used money and politically connected lawyers to duck the worst charges in his original sex crime case, how he continued that playbook. And that was clear, even as the legal walls closed in those final couple years before he was arrested, things looked tough. His legal team did change over time, but he continued to keep up with the two lawyers you see here, Ken Starr and Alan Dershowitz. And they brought more than courtroom experience. They had links to the very top of the government and business elites who run large parts of this country.
It was the allegation against you was that Epstein forced then minor Jane Doe number 3 to have sexual relations with you, and that also you were an eyewitness to sexual abuse of other minors by Epstein. You have been out there vigorously defending your name, your honor, and denying these allegations fiercely. And I want to give you a chance now that it's come out in writing tonight to get your reaction.
Well, first of all, the woman who accused me has now stated categorically that she may have misidentified me, confused me with someone else. And these documents, if all the documents are revealed, will prove categorically that she did misidentify me, that I never met her, never heard of her, never spoke to her.
Professor, good to see you tonight. Why not fight this out in court in an effort to clear your name?
Well, I am going to. I have to do two things. One, defend the First Amendment right of every American to respond to false charges. And second, if the case does go to court, to show that she is a liar. Let me repeat categorically. She made up the whole story. I never met this woman. It was part of an extortion plot to obtain $1 billion from Leslie Wexner, a businessman, the man who owns Victoria's Secret. Her own lawyer admitted to me on tape that it would be impossible for me to have been in the various locations at those times, and that his client is, quote, wrong, simply wrong. I commissioned an investigation from the former head of the FBI, who concluded that she was wrong. Her own lawyers withdrew the charges, saying it was a mistake to do so. This same woman who accused me accused Bill Clinton and Al Gore and Tipper Gore of being on Jeffrey Epstein's island, and the reports of the Secret Service.
Bill Clinton did go to the island, right? Yeah, Bill Clinton did.
No, he was never on the island.
But he never went on the, he was never there ever.
No, he was never there. He issued a statement the other day saying he was never on the island, and Secret Service records confirmed that he was never on the island.
There was discrepancies, though, Alan. Wait. There was discrepancies on other matters with Bill Clinton. He said he was only on 2 flights, turns out, or 4. It turns out there were 6. I mean, he said Secret Service was always with him. It turns out they weren't always with him when he was on Epstein's plane. So
well, let's talk
I wouldn't throw yourself in with Bill Clinton on this.
sets of emails. This is from Catherine Rumler, who worked as Barack Obama's White House counsel, Democratic administration, White House counsel, lawyer representing the American presidency. Now, in the way that is normal in American life, she's the chief lawyer for Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're trading advice. She's getting his advice on, should I become attorney general? She's taking the advice of a convicted sex offender on should I accept Barack Obama's potential offer to be attorney general.
We begin here at 11 with breaking news. There is new fallout amid the release of the Epstein files. The top lawyer at Goldman Sachs, Kathy Remler, is stepping down after emails showed that she had a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Remler was also White House counsel to former President Barack Obama. Newly released documents show that she called Epstein Uncle Jeffrey and accepted luxury gifts from the disgraced financier. Her resignation takes effect June 30th, and in a statement, Remler said in part, "My responsibility is to put Goldman Sachs' interest first." The company's CEO said, "She will be missed. I accepted her resignation, and I respect her decision."
The intersection with the global financial crisis specifically is a wild story that, to be truly told, you need to put the evidence on screen as well. But the short version is that he had a company called Liquid Funding Limited that was domiciled in the Bahamas, that was partially owned by Bear Stearns. And Bear Stearns, is where he had come up for a long time. And Liquid Funding Limited was selling CDOs, the same types of CDOs that eventually caused the global financial crisis. It was capitalized at, I believe, $100 million and allowed to sell 20 billion with a B of CDOs. And I actually just was looking at that statistic earlier today because this is the craziest story. And that little CDO factory that Jeffrey Epstein was running tied into Bear Stearns. And if you recall, Bear Stearns was one of the first to collapse, right? That shut down in the months directly preceding Bear Stearns starting to collapse. And Jeffrey Epstein redeemed all of those CDOs, all of those assets. The terms are, I don't know the technical terms for what he did, but basically he made a run on the bank on those exact assets that were the exact problem. And he was tied into the exact bank that was financially distressed. And then he wound that whole company, Liquid Funding Limited, up and disappeared. And later, JP Morgan, the bank that he later worked with after, Bear Stearns was his early banking career. And then he later was doing all of his money laundering and banking and referring of people at JP Morgan. They came in, swooped up Bear Stearns for pennies on the dollar. They also later spun Liquid Funding Limited back up. There's a whole, there's a very overt financial paper trail that Jeffrey Epstein was better acquainted with the problem than almost anyone in the world because he was deeply enmeshed in Bear Stearns and knew the leadership of Bear Stearns very well. And he understood CDOs and he was selling CDOs. And then he just so happens to wind his whole shop up and close it down and redeem it all right at the moment when things are about to go bust.
And another thing that's interesting is just a couple around that same time, the person who had been the legal counsel for Bear Stearns most of the time that Epstein was working for that bank became CIA director under Reagan, Bill Casey.
Year 2000, the CEO of JP Morgan, Sandy Warner, told Jess Staley that he should meet this guy named Jeffrey Epstein, saying, quote, "He's one of the most connected people I know of in New York." In the next few years, Epstein would go on to allegedly refer several extremely high-profile clients to Staley, such as Sergey Brin, co-founder of Google, Larry Page, co-founder of Google, Nick Ribis, former head of Donald Trump's casino empire, Catherine Rumler, former Obama White House counsel. That referral was made in February of 2019, by the way, right before he got caught and died. Ghislaine Maxwell was referred. Glenn Dubin, a billionaire hedge fund manager, was very close to Epstein and was referred to JP Morgan. Leon Black, founder of Apollo Global Management. Mort Zuckerman, a real estate billionaire. Thomas Pritzker of Hyatt Hotels. Boris Nikolic, the Gates Foundation science advisor. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary. Prince Andrew. Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, the current Israeli prime minister, Lord Peter Mendelsohn, David Gergen, the Sultan of Dubai, Howard Rubenstein. According to the Daily Beast, by 2011, Epstein was considered the, quote, biggest producer for JP Morgan's private banking division. And they also referred to him as the advisor to the Google founders. Leslie Wexner owns Victoria's Secret and L Brands, right? He's the bank that bankrolled Jeffrey Epstein. And I was saying earlier that he signed the power of attorney over to Jeffrey Epstein so that Jeffrey Epstein was able to sell his assets, manage his assets, buy on his behalf. He could sell Victoria's Secret without Leslie Wexner in the room or even his knowledge if he wanted to, because that's the level of power of attorney that he signed over to Jeffrey Epstein when he was his money manager. And the reason why you do that is so that you can claim that you don't know about his operation. He was just my money manager. I didn't know he was running this thing because I wasn't involved in any of those transactions. But what that meant is that Leslie Wexner damn well knew. There's a whole, we could go into the mega group and we could go into his connections to Charles Bronfman, all these other things.
But I was saying about the Victoria's Secrets, if you're a pedophile, you want to work with kids, a Nickelodeon. If you're a freak, what do? You get in the underwear
That's how
business.
they're recruiting, is they're recruiting from the Victoria's Secret modeling, and Jeffrey Epstein was claiming that he was a rep. But do you know about the CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch that went down for running a sex trafficking ring?
Yeah.
He was Leslie Wexner's guy. When Leslie Wexner, he bought Abercrombie & Fitch in like 1990, maybe 91, 89. And then one of the first things he did was he put that dude into position as CEO. That was Leslie Wexner's dude. And he becomes the CEO, and he's gay, and he likes really hot young male models. And he started running a male sex trafficking ring out of Abercrombie & Fitch. So Leslie Wexner, this dude who is a self-proclaimed possessed by a demon.
What?
Yeah. Whitney has a whole chapter where she goes into this article that was done by a mainstream news source like 10, 20 years ago, where they're interviewing Leslie Wexner and asking him about how he came to power and what's his secret. It's called his D-Book, D-Y-B-U-K, and you can read about this on Wikipedia as well. And he describes in his own words that he's possessed by a D-Book, which is like a Yiddish word for a evil demon. That's exactly the source.
He says, and now perhaps it's time to reintroduce Leslie Wexner's D-Book, the demon that always wakes up in the morning with Wexner and tweaks and pulls at him. When he was a boy, his father called it tummel, a churning. So he feels molten and unformed, pricked by these spiritual pins and needles. He met this demon again when he was 40 and already worth $500 million.
They said that, for example, that some, 1,500 references to pizza, right? And pizza and grape soda. So I searched, used AI. I said, what would grape soda stand for in a pedophilic world? And they said that there's no evidence of it, but grape is construed by some as meaning G-rape, meaning gang rape. And so grape could be gang rape. And I'm going, in that world, that's totally self-consistent. It doesn't make it true. But I couldn't otherwise think of what grape would mean. Grape. Who eats pizza and grape soda?
I need to say one thing, and that is the amount of people connected to this thing. It's unbelievable. And you can make left, right-hand turns while walking down this trail at just about every point, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So trying to stay focused and follow the Epstein trail is extremely difficult. There was one trail that I diverted down, and that was you start hearing a lot of talk about the last drop of emails, pizza and grape soda. This same terminology was used in the Podesta emails. This is Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, either hacked into John Podesta's computer, got a hold of his Gmail account, or somebody delivered the files to them. Doesn't matter. They published all of them.
These emails get dumped online full of everything that was in John Podesta's life. And John Podesta is a very powerful and connected man.
Get back to our guests who've been with us listening into what the president delivered tonight. Al Hunt, Washington editor, is here with us. Also, John Podesta, former chief of staff to the Clinton White House. And, of course, John Sununu, former Republican senator.
And there was lots of stuff in those emails that was overtly concerning, politically concerning, geopolitically concerning. But people on the internet then started to notice these strange pizza messages, messages about, $40,000 worth of hot dogs or something like that being flown to DC for parties.
You see a lot of the same names that are connected with Epstein, and they're talking about the same shit. Pizza, grape soda. Pizza, it's kids. Grape soda, gang rape. You'll hear people say differently, but I'm sorry, I don't know a single grown person in today's world that emails another buddy and says, hey, I want to go out for grape soda and pizza tonight. It just doesn't fucking happen. So I started down that trail. I got into John Podesta pretty deep. It's fucking terrifying. It's so terrifying that I played it for Londa, and both of us started crying. There's a video out there that is allegedly John Podesta abusing a child. There's a lot of debate whether or not it's accurate or not. Grok, I've run it through Grok, I've run it through ChatGPT. It all comes back with the same bullshit answer. Oh, this has been debunked by so-and-so at such and such news agency. Okay, run a voice analysis. That's what I really want to see. Watch one of this guy's interviews, and if you want to, you can go and find that video and you listen to the voice in the video and compare it to his voice. I'm sorry. To me, it matches. But it doesn't even matter whether or not that video is real, and it doesn't matter whether or not it's Podesta in the video. What matters is that these people are openly fucking talking about abusing kids and gang raping them. And that was an avenue that I just can't go down. I'm not mentally prepared to do it. So I deleted 6 minutes out of this video because you guys don't need to see it unless you want to see it. Contact me directly via message. I'll send you the link. But I'm warning you, it's fucking difficult to watch. Now, what's not under dispute is some of the artwork that Podesta and his brother were sending back and forth to each other. And if that doesn't tell the fucking story, then I don't know what will. You guys are far enough in this to understand where we're going. And I'll tell you, it really doesn't have much to do with the kids. The kids is a byproduct, a horrible byproduct. What it has to do is the amount of collusion, the amount of nepotism, the amount of bullshit that's been pulled over all of our fucking eyes collectively as a public and as a population, a global population. Somebody needs to fucking fix it. And I'm going to tell you at the end of the video, the only thing that's going to fix it. Anyways, we're going to continue on and stay away from the Podesta emails and all of that nonsense because it's too deep of a hole and I can't stomach it.
As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people.
Sent draft emails in this particular situation have caught a lot of attention. What do you know about them?
That's right. Well, Aaron, these two drafted emails are both dated July 18th, 2013, and they were saved in Jeffrey Epstein's email accounts. They appear to be draft emails from Epstein to itself. It's not actually clear who authored them, and there's no indication the messages were ever sent, no evidence they were shared with Bill Gates or anyone else. Now, in those draft emails, Epstein or whoever authored them makes graphic and explicit and unverified allegations about Gates. Within one email, Epstein claimed he helped, quote, get drugs in order to deal with the consequences of sex with Russian girls and set up illicit tryst with married women. The email also references Gates asking Epstein to provide Adderall for bridge tournaments. One draft email alleges that Gates tearfully asked Epstein to delete messages referencing an STD, writing, "Your request that I provide you antibiotics that you surreptitiously give to Melinda." It also says Gates asked him to delete explicit personal details about his penis. Now, a representative for Gates strongly denied those claims, telling CNN they were, quote, absolutely absurd and absolutely false. And Gates himself was asked about this by a CNN affiliate in Australia. Take a listen to what he said here.
Apparently, Jeffrey wrote an email to himself. That email was never sent. The email is, false. So I don't know what his thinking was there. It just reminds me, every minute I spent with him, I regret and I, apologize that I did that. It's factually true that I was only at dinners. I never went to the island. I never met any women. And so, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
Those were not the only meetings, according to Epstein's calendars and emails, which we went through. Epstein's email listed a dinner with Gates in December 2010, a possible lunch in February 2011, followed by a dinner in April and October 2011. The records also show a planned meeting in Norway in August 2012, another a week later, 2 meetings in February 2013, a possible dinner in September 2013 in which Epstein extended an invite to a Norwegian diplomat. We also saw a Google Calendar reminder for a Skype meeting with Gates in January 2014, a meeting and a phone call in September 2014.
I have to put more words to the muck for context for our listeners. The emails in the files suggest that Bill Gates had additional affairs and that he tried to get medication to treat a sexually transmitted infection, and that he was going to give you the medicine without you knowing. His representative has said all of this is false. It is not on you to have to respond to the details of that alleged behavior, but I wonder what your dominant emotion is when you read these news articles with these details.
Sad. Just unbelievable sadness. Unbelievable sadness, right? And again, I'm able to take my own sadness and look at those young girls and say, my God, how did that happen to those girls, right? And so for me, it's just sadness for, I left my marriage. I had to leave my marriage. I wanted to leave my marriage. And so it's just sad.
Your piece is long. I have to warn people. I definitely think everybody should go and try to read it. It does take time. It's detailed. This is not just some fly-by-night, slap it together investigative piece that you've done. It takes a solid hour to read this thing. And you've packed it with a lot of evidence that these power players potentially, I don't know if we'd go as far as to say they created COVID, but certainly utilized it in order to implement the level of pandemic that we were subject to. Would you say, how would you categorize it?
Well, it's a pretty shocking set of emails and revelations, because what we're seeing essentially is that there was an entirely new strategy for governance that was introduced through not sovereign nations, through democratic elected officials, but through a NGO structure that was also a charitable investment instrument that was architected by Bill Gates as well as Epstein, very intimately, actually. There's a number of emails that show that, in fact, it was Epstein that had actually orchestrated the entire model for what was going to be, according to Epstein's estimate, of something like $100 billion instrument, where they would essentially surveil countries, especially in the third world, like Pakistan, as well as regions that were known to have conflict. And they would basically create infrastructure that could surveil populations in anticipation of pandemics and other serious infectious diseases. And so this was one of the things that Epstein was orchestrating with JP Morgan, as well as some of the world's financial elite. And this was documented in the first, in the now 6-part series, where you have emails that show clearly that Epstein was directing the formation of what would become Project Molecule, which is basically JP Morgan's document laying out a collaboration with, the Gates Foundation, with Melinda and Bill as chairs, along with Warren Buffett and several others, to create what essentially was a permanent structure for deploying vaccines, financing them, and then essentially, once again, creating the equivalent of a militarized model of biosurveillance, which, as we've all lived through now, we know that the World Health Organization, United Nations, was basically creating a supranational biosecurity state that preempted all nations' sovereign constitutions, as well as the individuals within those nations.
The presence of social media plus a pandemic is a combination that's never been tried before. And, nobody would have predicted that I and Dr. Fauci would be so prominent in, really kind of evil theories about, did we create the pandemic? Are we trying to profit from it? And on and on. And so, I'm very surprised by that. I hope it goes away. I hope it doesn't hold back, mask wearing or seeking out vaccines.
The idea that we are now a few days away from a new administration obviously prompted the really extraordinarily, very enjoyable, and I'm really pleased I had the opportunity to listen to the panel, both of Amy and Ron, and as well as Bill and Dr. Jeffery, which really, I think, set the stage for so many of the things that we are going to be dealing with over the coming years. Given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak.
Please find attached a draft agenda for the meeting on preparing for pandemics as requested, and this was from 2015. All right. Let's discuss next steps, for example, how to officially involve the World Health Organization and ICRC as a co-branding. Best regards, and hope we can pull this off. This is the kind of things that Bill Gates kept reaching out to Epstein for, reasons.
Let me give you that. I know in my case,
Is your money dirty money?
If you live,
I just asked a question. Is your money dirty money?
No, it's not. So, in fact,
why is it not dirty money?
Because I earned it,
But you earned it.
I earned it legally.
We went back to this before. You earned
Yes.
it. You earned it, advising the worst people in the world, right? That do enormous bad things, and just to make more money.
So, instead of asking me the question, should you take the money? Because I think it's a legitimate question.
You think it's a legitimate question?
Yes, no
Why?
question. Because I think ethics is always a complicated subject, but I can tell you that with the money I gave to help try to eradicate polio in Pakistan and India, instead of asking me whether that money should be given to these children for vaccines, I think you might want to ask their mothers who received the vaccine, who know their child now won't get polio, and ask them if Epstein should have helped these people.
If we
with
walked
their
in,
money.
if we walked in, you're a
that a fair
mathematician.
question?
You're a mathematician. If we walked into that clinic where they're giving that money out to these people that are in the most dire straits of poverty and sickness, and told them that the money was coming from class 3 sexual predator?
Tier 1.
Tier 1's the highest and worst?
No,
I'm the lowest.
I'm the lowest.
You're the lowest. Okay, tier 1, you're the lowest. But a criminal.
Yes.
That the money came from them. What percentage of people do you estimate? I understand you don't like probabilities. Do you estimate would say, I don't care, I want the money for my children?
I would say everyone said, I want the money for my children.
Did they know where the money came from?
I think if you told him,
if
I told him
100%, 100%.
the devil
himself.
The devil himself said, "I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life."
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
One of the things they're saying is like he was indicted, and then right after he's indicted, he orders how many gallons?
6 55-gallon containers full of sulfuric acid.
Jesus Christ.
Well, one thing is that there is a physiological reaction that corresponds to this phrase that, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Like, that's a real physiological feeling. I don't know whether the hair actually does that, but it's exactly what it feels like. You're meeting somebody who is unholy. And, one of the most interesting things is that he was beckoning into a world that didn't seem to exist but for him as the doorman. He felt rich in a movie sense, which is not something that you find among actually rich people. A lot of very wealthy people don't own an island. If you look at Jeffrey Epstein's wealth, it was like gold beaten into gold foil so that it could cover a vast area and leave the impression of a solid gold life. But it was really probably a mid-9-figure fortune that had been used to buy islands and planes, which is not what any 9-figure person is going to do.
So you had a felt sense, an embodied sense of discomfort?
Oh, hell yeah.
And where did that come from?
The fact that he had a lipstick camera pointed at me from an art object, that he laid a table that was preposterously long and thin with a tablecloth made of an American flag to make it look like a coffin so that I would spill my coffee on the flag of my own country. I mean, the fact that he looked like a mutant Ralph Lauren with this kind of lubricious quality, and he's talking all of the science and market stuff, and nothing adds up, and there's an heiress bouncing on his knee to get her boobs to jiggle to see whether it can distract. I mean, it's like one of these crazy scenes where nothing about it was normal. Remember that story, The Most Dangerous Game, where a man invites you to his island so he can hunt you? This was scary. And it was meant to be scary.
Sounds menacing.
Well, I think his product was silence. People think that his product was sex or finance, but it was silence, I'm pretty sure. If you're scary enough, look, rich people can get sex, but they can't necessarily get people to shut up afterwards. And my take on it instantly was, this is not an actual human. This is a construct of someone's. Someone has created a fake human being called Jeffrey Epstein, who's a mysterious currency trading financier with crazy rules so that no one would ever invest with him. And I think that was to keep people from seeking his investment services. I mean, he's labeled disgraced financier, but nobody has a record of trading with him. He was sitting there, he comes into the meeting and he says, well, Eric, I was just doing some currency trading. And I thought about that scene that you sometimes see and as a meme with Steve Buscemi with a skateboard over his shoulder.
Hello, fellow kids. Teenagers. Yeah. Hello, fellow financial traders.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, you don't really look like a rich guy who trades in markets.
Not something that could be done by a simple mind.
You think he did it?
Oh, he has a team of manipulators?
No, when I say I think he was a construct, I literally mean that. I think he was constructed, like fitted with a story.
Oh, so you think he was a plant?
No, I think he was a construct.
What's that? Okay, you're going to have to dig into.
I think Jeffrey Epstein, super genius financier, was not a thing that existed. Where did the money come from? You're going to mumble Lex Wexner? Okay, so that's what you mumble. But then, there's this missing fortune of Robert Maxwell and this fortune of Jeffrey Epstein that we can't explain. Are those the same fortune? It's like a conservation of money principle, that if you have a fortune that's missing and you have a fortune that can't be explained and they're connected by Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know. Why is it that no hedge funds, what is it? They file form, I forget if it's 13F. There's certain forms that you have to file. Nobody's ever asked for these things. Who's his prime broker? Where has somebody gone over the prime brokerage? What are his trades? He would have to move the market if he was, doing a yard of euros or Swiss francs or who knows what, like $1 billion. That would move the market. So there's no way you can fake retroactively a hedge fund of immeasurable size that trades currencies. I don't think he was a currency trader. He told me he was a currency trader.
So when you say a construct, who constructs? Who's the builder?
I don't know. I would imagine some version of the intelligence community.
But what's stunning is the number of people Epstein knew. Just the breadth of his network is just way, way beyond anything that I knew. Mike Benz kind of foreshadowed it in some of his earlier podcasts from a handful of months ago, where he said that he's a deal maker. He's not as much a blackmailer as a deal maker. And that turns out to look correct to me, although there's some pretty pervy stuff in there too. Epstein his entire career was networking. And so by the time he was supposedly dead, which I actually am increasingly of the mind that he's not.
You think he's alive?
Yeah, I think he's alive.
Why?
Well, first of all, I don't think the cadaver was him. Second of all, there's actually a photograph of someone who looks like it could be him in Israel. So he could be, doing his Grizzly Adams, his, bearded cover-up thing. I don't know why he'd be so visible, but they don't seem to worry that much about covering things, right? They seem to just have this gaslighting ability to say, well, okay, he's not dead, but whatever. So yeah, there's a photo of him walking along with a couple of guys who look like maybe Israeli guards or something. They look young and tough, and so I don't know. And the other problem I have is he seems to have been so important at this deal making. There's no way he didn't have kill switches in his portfolio. I mean, the guy was a pro, right? He was a pro for his entire adult life. He was a pro, and he's not going to let himself get offed. And without huge consequence, and there was no consequence, and therefore I would say that he probably cut a deal.
To the Epstein files, we discovered that prosecutors wrote an announcement about Epstein's death a day before he was discovered dead. So let's take a look at the document in question. It says United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and if you look at the date. Right there on the top left-hand corner, it says Friday, August 9th, 2019. He was discovered dead on the 10th. Okay, so this document can be found among the dozens of documents in the disclosure labeled as statements from the Southern District of New York's US Attorney's Office.
Prior to Jeffrey Epstein's death, just by 10, 15, 20 minutes or so, there were some threads going on in 4chan that was coming out and saying Jeffrey Epstein died before any of the mainstream media reported on it, just about 40 minutes prior. And after Jeffrey Epstein's death, this ended up causing a lot of circulation on social media. The news picked it up. And there was actually a subpoena done on 4chan and a few other social media sites and forums to figure out the identity of these people. Okay, it was reported now in the new Epstein file release that, yes, this was an actual verified post by one of the prison guards that was at Jeffrey Epstein's prison the day he died. So it was an actual verified post. So here's the post. Let's read it. And then I'm going to show you all the evidence and really break it down. So this was reported in August 10th, 2019. Not saying anything after this. Please do not try to dox me. But last night after 4:15 count, they took him medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We don't release anyone on the weekends unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he's put in a single man cell and hangs himself. Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in and we did not record the plate number. And a guy in a green military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out.
That entry in an observation log of the video from the Metropolitan Correction Center appears to suggest something previously unreported by authorities. Quote, a flash of orange looks to be going up the L tier stairs. Could possibly be an inmate escorted up that tier.
We showed this video to multiple video forensics experts who agreed what the FBI and others have said is simply not true. That video and other evidence led to the conclusion by the government that Epstein's death on August 10th, 2019, at 10:38 p.m., the report says someone, probably Noel, carries a bundle of bedding or clothing up the stairs. It's a rare instance the video does catch movement on the stairs, but barely. Let's see that zoomed in and in slow motion again. Several of the video forensic experts we spoke with were skeptical about the report's conclusion and thought that the video could be showing an inmate walking up the stairs.
It's possibly an inmate. Possibly. There it is. A flash of orange looks to be going up the L tier stairs. Could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. So maybe that's the guy that they said that that looked like Jeffrey Epstein that they killed. Who knows? Official reviews of Epstein's death make no mention of the figure in orange. And later pronouncements from authorities, including the Attorney General at the time, Bill Barr, were that no one entered Epstein's housing tier that night of his death. Well, we know that's a lie.
Former Attorney General William Barr was on Capitol Hill today to answer questions about the Jeffrey Epstein files. In the hours after the convicted sex offender was found dead inside his Manhattan jail cell back in 2019, Barr pledged to personally lead the investigation into his death.
Barr personally watched 11 hours of surveillance footage from the Metropolitan Correctional Center. There's this missing minute. Attorney General Pam Bondi has said that there's a refresh that happens before midnight, but a high-level government source told CBS reporter Dan Rutnick that actually there is original footage with that minute. Did Bill Barr see that minute? What is on it?
Suicided. And then the video game evidence of his accounts being active after he was dead. I think it all adds up to a
I'm
likely
save
picture.
this photo, though. So which one is better? Okay, that's a better...
Not to mention that the actual photos of his death not matching. Let me pull this up. Not matching. So, the photo on the left is Epstein alive. The photo on the right is Epstein dead. If you're not aware, your ear is like a fingerprint. Your ear shape is unique to you. And, some people have similar ears to one another. But your ear is very much a thing. And this ear's shape of like a live Epstein is very different. This bottom rounder opening here, lumpy curl right there. The top has this clear kind of line protruding into this U hook on the right, and this one is a totally different shape. It's this long little bloop coming down from the top. Very different ears. The nose of Epstein being more straight, the nose of dead Epstein being more hooked. But the thing is that when you run the blackmail operation, that's a little different than stealing nuclear secrets, because the relationship capital that you've acquired over that time, there's a lot that lives in your head that is valuable as is, that you might not want to just suicide and erase all the things that are in that man's head. So, come to your own conclusions, do your own research. I would argue you should keep an open mind to all possibilities. Maybe he's alive. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's a fucking demon from the netherworlds. Who knows?
Are your eyes open? Mine are. I'll tell you guys why I made this video. Like I said, I was doing episode number 2 for Glass Eye Jimmy. And then when you get to the part and you find out that Epstein is involved in Iran Contra? Hold on, what? And Bill Barr is part of his defense team? And Daddy Barr was the one that originally hired him at the private school? And then you get into that goofy book that Barr wrote about the Carlyle Group? How do you explain that to somebody? I mean, how is that a conversation that you have with one of your friends that you can come out on the other side of the conversation and not look like a kook? It's not believable. I put the video together, I edited it, and I just watched it again, and I still can't comprehend the entire thing. The fact that it is so complicated and there's so many people connected to this thing, and the amount of game that they have been running on the general public blatantly right in front of our faces, the lying that they do on the camera. Dershowitz, oh, he was never on the island. He was never on that. Boom, there's your pictures. He was on the island. Not a single apology. Not a single person standing up and going, what we did was horrible. I take responsibility for it. I know. All these attorneys that were involved, none of them. Law license taken away? No. There's been zero repercussions for any of these people. They've been shifted around in some jobs. Nobody's behind bars. Think about that for a moment. Think about the amount of money that has been shifted around illegally. Think about the amount of lying and perjury that's gone on. And then think about all of these poor kids that have been raped and fucking tortured. And nobody's behind bars. I don't know what the answer is here. I mean, it's biblical. It has to be. I woke up the other night, I thought that's the only thing that makes sense. The world is controlled by evil. Satan controls the world, and he's got his minions, and these people are his minions. That's the only thing that explains that all of a sudden you jump up and you're a billionaire. No degree, gets hired in as a teacher, and now the guy is out circulating around the world with billions of dollars and connecting all the rest of these people. Delete AI from your computer. I mean, you just saw all the tech guys and Google guys, they're all involved in this too. I tried to run, as I told you guys before, that Podesta video for AI. The cards are stacked against all of us. I mean, I think the thing that drives me the most insane about it is you think about how much lawfare is going on in our home countries against the average Joe. The guy that gets out of work, drinks 3 or 4 beers, gets pulled over, his life's ruined. The 19-year-old kid that gets picked up with some narcotics, thrown in jail for 10 to 15 years. Fuck you, your life's done. These people are fucking monsters. And chances are not a single day in jail for any of them. Now, and after watching all of this, do you find it hard to believe that maybe Epstein's still alive? I don't. Look at all the other shit that they pulled. And you got Bill Gates roofing his own wife. Pandemic. Anyways, that was a lot. I need a drink, and I can't drink for another 5 days. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Leave some comments, man. I'm telling you, this is a rough one. And we'll get everything back on track and get back to normal programming here. But yeah, I wanted you guys to see this. So, one last thing. There really is only one way to fix this. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone's got the stomach for it.
And what about politics?
I don't give a shit.
You don't find it a great
I really don't care about
trove
politics.
Of
some people
material?
do. I don't. I think the system is corrupt. Every time I'm walking on the street, somebody's like, hey, vote for so-and-so. I'm like, it's all corrupt. Anarchy is the only way we're going to change anything. Violence. Kill a politician. That's the only way you can change shit.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're joking.
No.
Are you serious?
Yeah, voting is not going to make a difference. It has never. Not in 100 years.
So what would you like to see?
I'd like to see some politicians start getting murdered and reform this government.
Oh my God.
Do one that's not corrupted. I'd like to get business out of government, and they're not going to do it. So the only way to do that is start killing people.
Is it that exactly?
Look around the world. How has anything changed around the world? How has any regime change happen around the world? Violence. That's the only way. You think people in Arab countries are that much different than us?
Yeah.
Violence. That's the only way you depose a system that doesn't represent the people anymore.
I mean, I think the wonderful thing about the United States is that we can vote, and you do change
Your
administration.
vote doesn't go anywhere. Your vote doesn't do anything.
Yes, it does.
You can now be arrested and never tried if they say you're a terrorist. Never tried in your life. Just arrested and held forever. Who voted for that?
So shoot them all.
No, not shoot them all. Start shooting them until they get business out of politics and they start representing who we are instead of their money interests. Yeah, violence. That's the only way shit changes, man.
Okay.
Look at history. Tell me when a regime has changed with voting. I mean, I know. I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot. That's not fair because you haven't studied this stuff.
Well, no, I'm not trying to, murder politicians. I'm not trying to do what I don't like that others do that I would like to change, so I will shoot somebody because I'm pissed off that they're shooting somebody else.
Yeah.
It's not the way that I think, but that's fine. We think differently.
I think even if you don't want to shoot somebody, don't vote. Voting is you complicitly saying, I support this system, and I don't support it anymore. I don't. We're killing people in Yemen. We're murdering families in Yemen that aren't associated with any sort of terrorist thing. It was just an oopsie when we killed a wedding party. And Obama, the fucking hope change guy, just refused to comment on it. That's cool. Do what you want. It's not going to change. Your voting is not going to change that. I know one way that it'll change. I can look at history and tell you this is the way things change. Look at whenever a black guy gets shot, it's like, oh, it's bad. If this is a riot, no one comments on it. Those things go under the radar. When there's a riot in Baltimore, it's like, hold on, we've got to rethink the system here in Baltimore because people went crazy. That's just in history, here and elsewhere. That's the only way shit changes.
All right, we'll agree to disagree on that.
And I guarantee the only thing they're going to show from this clip is Ari Shaffir doesn't say Amy Schumer is the most funny comic in the world.